They exiled us, burned our colonies, buried our name beneath the stars, but they made one mistake. They let us survive. Now we're not just back. We've evolved. We've turned revenge into science war, into art, and exile into a forge. The galaxy thought it was safe. They were wrong. Humanity isn't knocking. We're breaking the door down. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. For centuries, the Council, composed of the most advanced alien civilizations in the universe, had kept humanity under control, monitoring their progress, limiting their expansion, and ensuring they never became a threat. Humans were seen as dangerous, unpredictable, and too aggressive for interstellar diplomacy. When Earth finally achieved faster-than-light travel, the Council responded with swift and decisive action. Humanity was banned. Every human colony beyond the solar system was forcefully abandoned. Trade routes were severed, and all diplomatic ties were cut. The Council declared that any species aiding humanity would face severe consequences. Earth was isolated, cast into the void like a diseased world, unworthy of galactic civilization. They thought it would break humanity, but it only made them stronger. The year was 2961, and Earth was no longer the helpless backwater the Council believed it to be. Deprived of resources, humanity had adapted, forced to rely only on themselves. They had innovated at a terrifying pace. Within a century, Earth's technology had surpassed even the most advanced civilizations of the Council. The old bureaucratic empires of the galaxy had grown complacent. Their power stagnant. Humanity, however, had been forged in struggle. They had learned how to build warships with minimal resources, how to create energy weapons that required a fraction of the power of traditional Council weaponry, and most terrifyingly, how to enhance their own biology. The exiled species had become something far more dangerous than before. The Council's mistake was believing that fear and isolation would weaken humans. Instead, it had united them. And now, after centuries in the shadows, humanity was ready to return. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, in the ruins of an old mining station, General Damian Riker stood before a massive screen displaying tactical data. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. Around him, Earth's greatest military minds watched in silence. "We're done hiding," Riker said, his voice low but firm. The room erupted into murmurs, but none dared to argue. The Council had pushed humanity too far. The band had not just exiled them, it had made them enemies. Operation Revenant begins now. Across the solar system, hidden fleets powered up their engines. Generations of secret preparation had led to this moment. The humans had built warships, faster, deadlier, and more resilient than anything the galaxy had seen. Their soldiers, genetically enhanced, battle-hardened and trained for the sole purpose of reclaiming their place, were ready. The Galactic Council believed humanity had been defeated. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Galactic Council remained oblivious to what was coming. For centuries, they had turned their attention elsewhere, focusing on petty squabbles between the dominant alien races, content in their belief that humanity had withered away in exile. But now the first signs of Earth's return were beginning to ripple through the galaxy. It started as whispers, ships vanishing along the outer trade routes, deep space communication hubs going silent, and supply convoys failing to reach their destinations. The Council dismissed these as pirate raids, which were an inconvenience at most. Then the attacks became more precise. A Jari battleship, one of the largest in the Council fleet, was found adrift near the Orion Expanse, its crew missing, its weapon systems disabled in ways no one could explain. A month later, a secret Council research station on the edges of the Alpha Draconis system went completely dark. When a reconnaissance team arrived, they found every security system fried, data cores stolen, and the words "We remember" scrawled across the station's walls in a language no alien could read. The Council was beginning to take notice. On Earth, deep beneath the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, General Riker stood, in the heart of humanity's greatest weapon, the Warborn Command Center. Before him, a holographic display of the galaxy flickered, red marks appearing where their strikes had already been felt. Beside him, Commander Lyra Soren, leader of the Phantom Division, spoke with quiet intensity. "The Council is still in the dark," she said. "They don't realize it's us yet, but they're getting closer." Riker nodded, eyes fixed on the galactic map. Let them wonder, let them grow paranoid. By the time they realize the truth, it'll be too late. Phantom Division was humanity's greatest creation. Soldiers augmented with biosynthetic enhancements, capable of infiltrating even the most fortified alien strongholds. They moved unseen, striking like ghosts, leaving nothing behind but fear. Riker turned to the rest of the War Council. "The time for small strikes is coming to an end. We need a message." His gaze hardened. "Something they can't ignore." Commander Varma exchanged a glance with Admiral K.L. Thorne, leader of the Black Armada, Earth's hidden war fleet. A slow, knowing smile spread across K.L. Thorne's face. "There's a council stronghold in the Tau Ceti system," K.L. Thorne said. "A fortress world heavily defended, one of their most secure locations outside the core worlds. If we hit it, they'll have no choice but to acknowledge us." A hush fell over the room. To strike a world of the Council was an act of war, but war had been inevitable. The moment humanity had been cast out, Riker exhaled slowly, then spoke with finality. "Tau Ceti falls." Across the solar system, humanity's fleets prepared for the first open battle in centuries. The Black Armada, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, emerged from the hidden shipyards of Titan. Weapons were primed, engines roared to life, and soldiers stood ready, their minds filled with generations of anger and determination. The Council had thought they had crushed humanity. Now humanity was coming for them. The fleet moved in silence. Hundreds of warships, sleek and angular, designed for speed and devastation, cut through the void as they approached Tau Ceti. The Black Armada had been forged in the darkness of exile, each ship a product of desperation, innovation, and revenge. They bore no insignia, no markings, only the cold black armor that swallowed light, a fleet of shadows descending upon the Galactic Council's fortress world. Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral K.L. Thorne stood at the command deck, her silver eyes reflecting the tactical displays around her. Stealth drives, holding one of her officers, reported Council. "Sensors won't see us until it's too late." K.L. Thorne allowed herself a grim smile. "Let's make history then." On the surface of Tau Ceti 3, the Council's fortress stood as a monument to their arrogance. The world housed one of the largest garrisons outside the core worlds, with planetary defense grids, orbital cannons, and enough firepower to hold off an entire fleet. But it wasn't built to stop this fleet. The first sign of the attack was the blackout. In an instant, the planet's communication networks shut down. Every satellite, every relay station, every security system silent. The fortress's automated defenses flickered, their targeting systems scrambled by unseen forces. Then the sky opened, human warships moving with terrifying precision unleashed devastation upon the Council's forces. Orbital cannons were wiped out in seconds, and anti-air batteries turned to molten slag before they could even activate. The fortress, once a symbol of the Council's might, had become a grave of arrogance. From above, the Phantom Division deployed. Silent figures dropped from the sky, clad in adaptive armor that blended with the shadows. They moved like wraiths, bypassing defenses with ease, cutting down guards before they could raise alarms. Commander Lyra Soren led the charge, her squad infiltrating the command center. The alien officers inside barely had time to react before they were executed with ruthless efficiency. Within minutes, the Council's stronghold was in flames. In the Council's capital world of Varathes Prime, panic erupted. News of the attack reached the ruling chambers with unprecedented urgency. A race that was supposed to be banished had just wiped out an entire fortress world without suffering a single loss. Senator Zalthor, a reptilian representative of the Jari Empire, slammed a clawed fist onto the table. This is impossible. Humanity was neutralized. Across the chamber, Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar, leader of the Galactic Council, stared at the transmission. Smoke and fire filled the view screen, the ruins of Tau City 3 standing as proof of their failure. A single message had been left behind for the Council to see, carved into the ruins of their stronghold. "We have not forgotten, we have not forgiven." The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in agitation. "We were fools to believe they would stay silent." Zalthor's eyes narrowed. "Then we crush them, we gather the fleets, and we burn Earth to the ground." A new voice interrupted, cold, calculating. No. All eyes turned to the speaker, High Strategist Nivara of the Karithi Dominion, the most advanced military mind in the Council. Her insectoid form remained motionless as her many eyes analyzed the situation. "They have been preparing for centuries," Strategist Nivara said. "They have struck a world we considered untouchable. They are not acting out of desperation. This was a test." The chamber grew silent. Strategist Nivara's voice was devoid of emotion. "Humanity does not fear us anymore." Her many eyes blinked in eerie synchronization. "But we should fear them back in the Sol system aboard the Nemesis." Admiral Kale Thorne stood at the bridge, watching the retreating smoke from Tau Ceti on the view screens. "Mission complete." Commander Varma's voice came through the comms. "The Council knows we're back." Kale Thorne turned to General Riker, who stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "They're going to respond," she said. Riker nodded. "That's what we want." He stepped forward, staring out at the void, his voice calm. "Now we show them what happens when you try to erase humanity." The Council wasted no time. Within days, a massive fleet had been assembled, thousands of warships from every major species, a show of force, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council's response was swift and merciless, a total military campaign to destroy Earth and eradicate humanity once and for all. From their throne, world of Verathis Prime, Chancellor Drazel issued a declaration of war broadcast across the stars. Humanity was given its chance. It was warned, it was exiled, and now it has chosen war. We will not allow this disease to spread. Earth will be purged. The mistake of their survival ends now. Across the Council's empire, fleets mobilized, war factories roared to life. Armies were deployed. They believed this was a war they could win in days, perhaps weeks at most. They had no idea what they were walking into on Earth. General Riker stood in the Warborn Command Center, surrounded by holographic projections of the incoming Council fleets. The enemy was moving fast. Good. The humans had spent centuries in the shadows, refining their weapons, testing their strategies, and designing technologies the galaxy had never seen. The war humanity had prepared for was finally here. Commander Lyra Soren adjusted her combat gauntlet. "They're bringing everything they have," Admiral Kyle Thorne smirked. "Then they've already lost." The Council believed humanity would fight a traditional war, fleet against the fleet, planetary sieges, ground battles. They assumed humanity would break under overwhelming firepower, but the Council still didn't understand what humanity had become. They didn't understand the phantom fleets, the experimental stealth warships that could phase between dimensions, striking without warning. They didn't understand the Legion protocol, the AI-driven war networks that allowed human forces to act as one unified mind, predicting enemy movements with terrifying accuracy. They didn't understand Project Revenant, the bio-enhanced super soldiers bred for war, stronger, faster, and more adaptable than anything the galaxy had ever faced. They didn't understand that humanity had turned war into an art form, and they were about to learn. The first Council fleets arrived at the edges of the solar system expecting to face resistance. Instead, they found nothing. No defenses, no fleets. Just the cold emptiness of space. Arrogance clouded their judgment. They advanced deeper, and then the traps activated. Invisible mines tore through warships. Energy storms fried navigation systems. Cybernetic viruses shut down entire command networks. Ships collided in the chaos, confusion spreading like wildfire. Then the real attack began. Human warships decloaked inside the enemy formations, striking from impossible angles. The phantom fleets appeared and disappeared like specters, obliterating key targets before fading back into the void. Council vessels turned to flee, only to find every exit blocked, every escape route already predicted. The battle wasn't a fight, it was a slaughter. Across the system, Legion squads deployed onto enemy flagships, their cybernetic enhancements making them more machine than human. Council soldiers, unprepared for the speed and brutality of these warriors, fell before they could even raise their weapons. In the span of a single day, the first wave of the Council's invasion force was annihilated, and Earth hadn't even fired a single planetary defense cannon. On Varathus Prime, panic spread through the Council chambers. Reports flooded in, entire fleets gone, officers missing, planets under attack from unseen enemies. Strategist Nivara, the High Strategist, watched the chaos in silence. "This is impossible," Zalthor hissed. "They were supposed to be weak." Strategist Nivara finally spoke, her voice as cold as ever. "We miscalculated." The room fell silent. "They have been preparing for this far longer than we expected," she continued. "We assumed their exile weakened them. It did not. It forged them into something stronger than any of us." She turned, her many eyes narrowing. "We are no longer hunting humanity." She let the words sink in. "They are hunting us." Aboard the Nemesis, Admiral Cale Thorne stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage of Council ships drift through space. "This is just the beginning," she murmured. General Riker nodded. "They wanted war." His eyes burned with cold fury. "Now we give them extinction." The Council was reeling. Never before had they faced an enemy like this, an enemy that struck from the shadows, an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. The fleets they had sent to destroy Earth had been torn apart like fragile glass, their proud warships reduced to debris, drifting in the cold abyss. Now the Council's paranoia was growing. Humanity was no longer an inconvenience. It was a nightmare they had unleashed upon themselves, yet Chancellor Drazel refused to admit defeat. "We are the rulers of this galaxy," he roared in the Council chambers, his voice echoing through the Grand Hall. "We have crushed empires before. Humanity is no different." But as his rage filled the room, Strategist Nivara, the High Strategist, remained motionless, her many black eyes staring through the holographic battle reports. "No," she finally said. The word was quiet, but it cut through the Chancellor's fury like a blade. "We have already lost," Strategist Nivara continued. "The moment we underestimated them, the moment we cast them into exile, without ensuring their extinction, we sealed our fate." Drazel snarled. "So what do you propose? That we surrender?" Strategist Nivara slowly turned her gaze to him. "No," she said again. "I propose that we hide." The Council chamber fell into stunned silence. Strategist Nivara leaned forward, her mandibles twitching in what could almost be described as unease. "We are fighting an enemy that does not fight conventionally. They do not seek to conquer.
They seek to destroy. We are not dealing with an empire, we are dealing with a revenge machine.
She activated a hollow map of the galaxy showing the growing number of Council worlds that had gone dark in the past month. They are not just attacking military targets, they are erasing us. In the darkness of space, the Black Armada moved like a silent storm. The world after the world fell without warning. Human warships bypassed planetary defenses, dropping infiltration teams that disabled entire governments overnight. Political leaders vanished. Military installations turned to smoking ruins before reinforcements could even arrive. On Kelvara Prime, the ruling family of the Vornathi Empire awoke to find their planetary palace breached. In their final moments, they saw faceless human operatives clad in black armor before their entire bloodline was wiped out. On Drachna 4, the warlords of the Jari Empire tried to rally their forces. Their capital city was leveled in a single night. Their bodies were never found. On Thalos 5, the major production hub for Council warships, an entire factory world was consumed in flames when human saboteurs triggered cascading reactor failures across the planet. The galaxy was bleeding. Humanity was not waging war, they were committing extermination. Back in the Sol system aboard the Warborn Command Center, General Riker stood before his gathered commanders. "We are past the point of negotiation," he said. "They exiled us. They tried to erase us. They failed.
Now, we finish what they started." Commander Lyra Soren's expression was unreadable. "And if they surrender," Riker's voice remained steady. "They won't." A hush fell over the room. But then Admiral Kael Thorne spoke, her voice like a knife through the silence. "And if they do," she said, "we don't accept." On Varathis, Prime Chancellor Drazel stared at the final reports. Entire species were wiped from the stars. Entire worlds are reduced to lifeless husks. For the first time in his life, he felt fear.
The humans were coming, and this time there would be no mercy. The galaxy was unraveling. The once mighty Galactic Council had ruled with an iron grip for centuries. Its authority unchallenged, its dominion absolute. Now that dominion was a dying ember, entire fleets had been reduced to floating wreckage. Key industrial worlds lay in ruins. The Council's great cities, once thriving, centers of commerce and power, were silent tombs. The war was no longer about survival, it was a slaughter. Yet in the heart of Varathis Prime, Chancellor Drazel refused to yield. "We still have the core worlds," he growled, staring at the gathered remnants of his war council. "Humanity has taken our fringes, but they have yet to breach the core. As long as we hold the capital, we still have power." General Threxus, a hardened war commander from the Drachnar Empire, stepped forward. His reptilian features were lined with exhaustion. "With respect," Chancellor Threxus said, his voice heavy. "Our fleets are broken, our people are terrified. The moment humanity arrives here, the war is over." Drazel slammed a fist onto the war table. "Then we make a stand. We gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We will not go down without a fight." The chamber fell silent. Strategist Nivara the High. Strategist observed the exchange without expression. She had spent her long life analyzing war, predicting outcomes and calculating survival chances. She did not speak because she already knew the truth. Humanity had already won. And then the alarms blared. In the void beyond Varathis Prime, the Black Armada emerged from the shadows. Thousands of human warships, their hulls painted in black to swallow light, advanced with the slow, deliberate inevitability of death itself. They did not rush. They did not waste effort. They moved as if they already owned the battlefield, and in a way they did. They, Council defense fleets, scrambled to meet them, forming desperate battle lines. They launched every last weapon in their arsenal, desperate to halt the advancing tide. The humans did not flinch. Stealth cruisers phased between dimensions, striking from impossible angles. Cyber warfare teams shut down enemy ships before they could fire a single shot. Legionnaires deployed in high-orbit drop pods, cutting through enemy defenses like a virus through flesh. The battle was not a contest. It was the last breath of a dying empire. Inside the Chancellor's war room, chaos erupted. "Our fleets are breaking." A tactical officer shouted. "They've already taken the outer orbital stations." Vokhtar gritted his teeth. "Deploy the planetary defense grid. I want every gun on that fleet. The defense grid is compromised." Another officer reported, his voice shaking. "They've already taken control of it." A deep, suffocating silence filled the room, and then the lights flickered. Elvin turned her many eyes toward the darkened corners of the chamber. "We're already dead," she murmured. The security doors slammed shut. Gunfire erupted. The war room descended into screams as human operatives emerged from the shadows, their weapons precise, their movements calculated. One by one, council leaders fell where they stood, their bodies slumping over the war table that had once dictated the fate of the galaxy. The last to fall was Supreme Chancellor Vokhtar. As he gasped for breath, blood pooling beneath him, he saw a shadowed figure standing over him. A human General Riker. Riker knelt beside him, staring into the Chancellor's eyes with cold detachment. "You should have finished the job when you had the chance," Riker said. Then, without another word, he ended Vokhtar's life. The Galactic Council was no more. Within hours, Varathis Prime burned. Its towers crumbled, its streets were flooded with smoke and ruin. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, and there would be no mercy. The war was over, but the new era was only beginning. The war was over, but humanity was not finished. With the fall of Varathis Prime, the Galactic Council ceased to exist. Its leaders were dead, its fleets were destroyed. Its laws, once absolute, had turned to dust across the galaxy. Species that had once bowed to the Council now faced a grim reality. Their rulers were gone, their armies had fallen, and the new masters of the stars had no intention of ruling with kindness. Humanity did not seek to govern the galaxy, they sought to rebuild it in their image, and that meant tearing down the old order piece by piece. The capital of the new regime was not on Earth. Earth had become a symbol, a legend whispered among the remnants of the galaxy, a forbidden world that no alien dared approach, shrouded in myths of its unbreakable defenses. Instead, humanity chose Draxus IV, a former industrial hub of the Council, as their new throne world. It was a planet of steel and fire where the sky was choked with the smoke of endless forges, where warships were built faster than the stars could count. From here, General Riker, now Supreme Executor of the human dominion, ruled with an iron grip. His council was not made of politicians, it was made of warriors. Admiral Kale Thorne, commander of the Black Armada; Lyra Soren, head of the Phantom Division Legate; Orion, leader of the Revenant Corps. There was no democracy, there were no negotiations, there was only one order. The species of the galaxy quickly learned what it meant to live under human rule. For those who surrendered, there was survival. They were allowed to exist under strict conditions. Their worlds were monitored, their resources were taxed. They were never allowed to rebuild their fleets beyond what humanity permitted. For those who resisted, there was annihilation. The Jari tried to fight back, launching a desperate last stand in the Kelvarnis Nebula. Their fleet was wiped from existence in a single night. Their homeworld is now a smoldering wasteland. The Yavati attempted an insurgency, believing they could wage a guerrilla war against their human overlords. They learned too late that humanity had mastered the art of total warfare. Their rebellion lasted 36 hours, their species was never seen again. And then there were the remnants, the scattered survivors of the former Galactic Council, hiding in the farthest reaches of space. clinging to the hope that one day they might rise again. They were hunted. One by one, the last survivors of the old regime were wiped out. The galaxy belonged to humanity now. And yet even as the stars burned under their dominion, there were whispers of a hidden enemy deep in the uncharted regions of space beyond the known galaxy. Something was stirring, something ancient, something watching. Humanity had proven themselves the apex predators of the galaxy, but they had not yet faced what lay beyond, and soon they would learn that in the grand order of the universe, even conquerors could become prey. The galaxy knelt beneath human rule. The once mighty Galactic Council had crumbled into dust, its remnants scattered its worlds, either subjugated or destroyed. Across the stars, alien civilizations lived under the ever-watchful eye of humanity's war machine. But in the void beyond charted space, something stirred. A signal. It was faint, an impossible whisper on frequencies long thought dead. It did not originate from any known civilization. It did not match any council archives. It was something older, and it was watching. Supreme Executor Riker stood aboard the horizon's end, humanity's most powerful command ship, staring at the transmission on the hollow display. The signal was repeating, a deep pulse that seemed almost alive, shifting in ways no language had ever been deciphered. "This doesn't match anything in the Council's archives," Riker asked. "No, sir," Admiral Cale Thorne responded, arms crossed. "And that's what concerns me." Behind them, Lyra Soren, head of the Phantom Division, leaned forward, her cybernetic implants processing the data faster than any human mind. "This isn't just a distress signal," she murmured. "It's an invitation." Riker's gaze hardened. An invitation to what? Asha hesitated, her neural interface analyzing the sub-frequencies. "Something is expecting us." Silence fell over the command room. For decades, humanity had been the hunter. They had torn through the Council's defenses, crushed the empires of old, and established dominance over the known galaxy. But this was different. This signal was not from prey. It was from something waiting. A task force was assembled. The Spearhead Fleet, a detachment of humanity's best warships led by the battleship Iron Vow, was sent beyond the edge of known space, following the signal to its source. For weeks they traveled through the void, crossing the desolate remains of star systems long abandoned, until finally they found it. A world, or what was left of one, a shattered planet. Its surface scarred with the ruins of a civilization so ancient that even time itself had forgotten its name. But the ruins were not dead. There was power pulsing beneath them. And the moment the humans arrived, the signal changed. It spoke. Inside the command center of the Iron Vow, the transmission echoed through the ship's speakers. It was not in any known language yet. Every human understood its meaning. "You are not the first." The word sent a chill through the room. We watched as others rose, as they conquered, as they fell. The signal pulsed as if amused. "You think yourself supreme, but you are only the next chapter in an endless cycle." Then, for the first time, Riker heard something he had not expected. Laughter, deep, resonant, inhuman laughter. And then something woke beneath the ruins. The ruins trembled beneath the surface of the shattered world. Ancient mechanisms groaned to life, shaking off the weight of millennia. Dust untouched for eons spiraled into the thin atmosphere as vast unseen machines rumbled deep beneath the crust. On the bridge of the Iron Vow, every human officer stood frozen, their eyes locked onto the planetary feed. The signal had changed. It no longer carried just whispers. It was now a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, deafening. And then the ground split open. "Fleet-wide alert," Admiral Cale Thorne barked. "Prepare for immediate withdrawal." "Negative," Riker countered, his voice like iron. "We hold a position. The humans had come here seeking answers.
He would not allow them to flee now, not when they were finally face to face with something that predated even the council. The ground continued to split apart, revealing something beneath a city.
A vast, impossible city buried beneath the planet's crust. Towers of obsidian metal pierced the broken sky, humming with power. Glyphs glowing with an eerie green energy traced patterns over massive walls, and at the heart of it all, a monolith, a black spire rising kilometers into the air, waiting. Riker exhaled. That's not just a ruin. Ashivama's cybernetic eyes flickered. Oh, she swallowed hard. That's a grave of arrogance. The fleet hovered above the surface, their weapons locked onto the monolith. Then, without warning, something answered the signal. The space around the planet ripped open. It wasn't a warp jump, it wasn't an FTL breach. There was something wrong, something unnatural. A hole in reality itself, and through it came ships. Or at least something like ships. Their hulls were blacker than the void, their forms shifting, rippling as if refusing to be fully seen. They made no sound. They gave off no energy signatures. They had been waiting, and now they had returned. Inside, the Iron Vow alarms blared, unknown vessels detected. They just appeared. Riker clenched his jaw. Hail them. No response. The ships did not move to attack. They simply watched. Then the monolith spoke again. You were warned. A terrible, slow realization dawned. This was not a simple distress signal. This was a test. And humanity had just triggered something that had ended empires before them. The unknown ships finally moved. Not toward the humans, toward the rest of the galaxy. Whatever these things were, they had just awoken, and they were not here to talk. The black ships moved without sound, without warning, without hesitation. Within moments they vanished, not into hyperspace, not into any known FTL pathway. They simply disappeared, slipping through the fabric of reality itself. And then, across the galaxy, the nightmare began. The first attack struck Omega-4, a human-occupied stronghold on the edge of the Dominion's territory. The colony had stood unchallenged for years, a fortress world built to crush any rebellion. It boasted planetary shields, orbital defenses, and an armada capable of holding off an entire fleet. None of it mattered. The enemy arrived inside the shields, their ships phasing into existence within Omega-4's defenses, as though they had never needed to travel at all. By the time the alarms rang, it was too late. The black ships unmade the colony, not with weapons, not with explosions, but with something worse. Wherever their shadows passed, matter simply ceased to exist. Buildings crumbled into nothing. People vanished, mid-step, mid-scream, mid-thought. Within 3 minutes, Omega-4 no longer existed. The transmission logs captured only one thing before the world was wiped out: a single whisper. We remember the Dominion's fleets responded at once. The Admiral Kyle Thorne led a counterattack, assembling 6 battle groups to defend the next projected targets. This time humanity was ready, or so they thought. The battle for Draxus 7 was a slaughter. The Iron Vow and her fleet held formation, their weapon arrays locked onto empty space. Every human gun, missile, and energy cannon was primed, watching, waiting. Then the black ships came again, not from hyperspace, not from warp gates. They simply appeared emerging from nothingness, in perfect synchronization, like an orchestra playing to the beat of war. The first volleys were fired, and they did nothing. Humanity's weapons passed through the black ships without effect. Bullets, beams, nuclear warheads, everything phased through them as though they weren't real. And then the enemy answered. A wave of darkness swept through the fleet ships, crumbling into dust as if they had never existed. Entire crews vanished. No screams, no wreckage, just erasure. Admiral Kyle Thorne ordered a retreat. Less than 10% of her forces survived. Back on Draxus 4, Supreme Executor Riker watched the battle logs in grim silence. The Dominion had won every war it had ever fought, but now they faced an enemy that didn't play by the rules of reality. Riker turned to Lyra, Soren, his expression like stone. "Find me something we can kill them with." Asha's cybernetic eyes flickered, scanning through every possible tactic, every historical war, every classified council archive they had seized. There was nothing but rumors, whispers of an ancient war fought long before the council, before any known civilization, and one name that kept appearing in the data, the Forgotten. "They were wiped from history," Asha murmured. "Not by time, not by war." She looked up at Riker, her voice quiet. "They were wiped out by these things." Riker's jaw tightened. "Then why the hell are they back?" Asha hesitated, and then she said the words Riker did not want to hear, "because we woke them up." The Dominion had one last chance. If they didn't find a way to fight back, humanity wouldn't just lose the war, they would be forgotten, just like those who came before them. The realization hit humanity like a tidal wave. They had not merely stumbled upon an ancient enemy, they had unleashed it. The Forgotten, as the Whispers called them, were not a race, not a species, not even a force of nature. They were something older, something that existed outside the boundaries of comprehension, a remnant of a universe that had ended long before this one began. And now humanity's relentless ambition had drawn their gaze. The Dominion was fracturing. The world after the world fell silent, wiped out from existence as the black ships spread their shadow across the galaxy. Panic gripped even the most hardened soldiers. The invincible war machine that had crushed the Galactic Council was powerless against an enemy that could not be touched, could not be fought, could not be understood. But humanity did not survive centuries of exile by surrendering. Supreme Executor Elias Riker stood in the Warborn Command Center, the last bastion of human resistance, now relocated to a fortified station orbiting Earth itself. The galaxy they had conquered was slipping away, but Earth, the cradle of their defiance, remained untouched, for now. And now, around him the remnants of his war council gathered. Admiral Cale Thorne. Her fleet was reduced to a handful of battered ships. Commander Lyra Soren, her cybernetic enhancements pushed to their limits as she scoured every scrap of data for a solution. And Legate Orion, the stoic leader of the Revenant Corps, his bio-enhanced soldiers ready to die for a cause they no longer fully understood. "We can't fight them with weapons," Asha said, her voice steady, despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "Everything we've thrown at them, energy, matter, even experimental phasing tech, it's useless then. We don't fight them with weapons," Riker replied. The room turned to him, confusion flickering in their eyes. Riker stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the hollow display, showing the encroaching darkness swallowing the stars. "They're not just erasing us, they're erasing everything we've built, everything we are. They want us forgotten, so we make sure they can't forget us." Cale Thorne raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we outlast them?" "No," Riker said. "I'm suggesting we burn so bright they choke on the ashes." The plan was desperate, insane, and quintessentially human. They called it Project Eternal Flame. Using the Dominion's most advanced technology combined with fragments of Council archives and the faint clues left in the ruins of the shattered world where this nightmare began, humanity devised a final act of defiance. They couldn't destroy the Forgotten, they couldn't stop them, but they could make sure their mark on the universe endured. The core of the plan was a weapon of last resort, a quantum resonance cascade. It wasn't designed to kill the enemy, it was designed to imprint humanity's existence into the fabric of reality itself. Every ship, every station, and every human world would become a beacon broadcasting a signal so powerful it would echo through time and space beyond the reach of erasure. It would cost everything. The black ships closed in on Earth, their silent advance unstoppable. The remnants of the Black Armada formed a final defensive line, knowing they would fall. The Phantom Division deployed across the system, planting the Cascade devices on every moon, every asteroid, and every fragment of human territory left. Riker stood on the bridge of the horizon's end, watching as the enemy approached. Beside him, Kale, Thorne, and Asher prepared for the end. "Activate it," Riker ordered. Across the solar system, the Cascade devices flared to life. A wave of light, impossible, blinding, infinite, erupted from Earth and its surroundings, rippling outward through the galaxy. It carried everything, humanity's history, their triumphs, their failures, their rage, their hope. It burned into the stars themselves, a testament that could not be undone. The Forgotten paused. For the first time, their advance faltered, as if the sheer audacity of humanity's act had caught them off guard, and then they struck. The black ships descended upon Earth, their shadows consuming the planet. In moments, the horizon's end vanished. The Warborn Command Center dissolved into nothing. Every human, every ship, every trace of their civilization was wiped out. The galaxy fell silent, but the signal remained. Long after the Forgotten retreated back into the void, long after the stars grew cold, the quantum resonance cascade endured. It whispered through the cosmos, a defiant echo that no force could silence. The Forgotten had won the war, but humanity had won eternity. They were gone, but they would never be forgotten. The Forgotten had won the war, but they would never be forgotten.